As you begin your study of Chapter 2, you'll be introduced to the concept of economics. Now, economics itself is a fairly complex topic, and this chapter in this course just gives you a brief introduction to economics, and very likely as you continue in your degree, we'll actually take full semester classes on micro and or perhaps both macro and microeconomics, and of course there's advanced topics of economics as well, but we'll just discuss some of the basics in this chapter. You'll discover as you read this chapter that there are two major branches of economics, macroeconomics and microeconomics. Macroeconomics focuses on economies as a whole. For instance, the entire U.S. economy would be considered macroeconomics, and that would be, how does the U.S. spend its money? What is the total overall gross domestic product? What is the tax rate? What is the fiscal policy? Microeconomics specifically concentrates on individuals and organizations in particular markets. For instance, what is the supply of gasoline, and how does the supply of gasoline affect the price, and how does the price affect how much gasoline individuals or consumers are willing to buy. And we'll discuss that a little bit more as we get further into this chapter, but again, macro is economies as a whole, and micro would be individual markets. As you read in the chapter, you'll learn that economics has often been called the dismal science. And that's because it studies the fact that we want more than our resources allow us to produce. And I always learned that when I first learned about economics is that we have, in general, unlimited wants, but there are limited resources. I would like a larger car, I would like a bigger house, but resources are limited. And so economics is the study of how individuals and corporations and of course economies as a whole deal with resources and unlimited wants. When you read the chapter and study the chapter, you'll be introduced to a few names. You'll be introduced to Malthus and Keynes and Adam Smith, and they're important, and they may show up in a quiz. Adam Smith actually was known as the father of economics, and he explained the concept of capitalism. And capitalism is where all or most of the land, the businesses and the factories are owned by individuals, not the government. And the key here, as we discussed in Chapter 1, those businesses are operated for a profit. And of course there are many countries with capitalist foundations, the United States, England, and as you can see here. In order for capitalism to exist, there are four rules or basic rights that must exist also in the nation. Number one is the right to own private property. You must have the right to be able to buy and sell your property, the right to own a business and keep all the business's profits to reinvest or to compensate the owners, the right for freedom of competition. If I want to start selling apples on the street corner and someone else already has, well, I have the right to do that in a capitalist society. And of course the right for freedom of choice. I can buy what I want to buy. I can choose this car or that car. So those are the four basic rights within capitalism. Another concept within economics is the concept of a free market. And in a free market, the decisions are made about how much I should produce as a company, or what I can buy, or how much I have to buy, or will buy, or willing to buy by consumers, is made by the market. And a good example would be commodities such as corn and wheat. The price is set by the market. The farmer decides how much grain he's going to produce and what grain he's going to produce by what he predicts the market cost will be. And of course, if the cost of wheat goes up, then people start using substitutes. And so that's the concept of a free market. Within economics, you'll also learn about supply curves and demand curves. And quite simply, the supply is the quantity that a business or a farmer is going to produce or willing to produce at a different price. And if you're from the area around here in the Palouse, you'll see a lot of grain silos. And a lot of what you see in those grain silos are farmers waiting for a price to hit a certain point before they release the grain, and so they're holding that grain until the price goes up, and as the price goes up, well, they're willing to sell a lot more grain, and so the higher the price, the more grain they're willing to produce or release from their silos. Now the demand curve acts in the exact opposite way of the supply curve. In the supply curve, the higher the price, the more the producer was willing to supply. Well, on the other hand, For the demand curve, consumers are willing to buy less at higher prices. And of course, a good example of this would be gasoline. If gasoline rises $1 a gallon, you're going to do whatever you can to use less. And on the other hand, if gasoline goes down to 50 cents a gallon, well, you're not going to mind getting that bigger car or taking that larger vacation. And so the supply curve, the higher the price, the more is produced. The demand curve, the higher the price, the less they will purchase. Another very important concept within economics is the equilibrium point. And the equilibrium point is where the demand curve and the supply curve actually intersect. That's the price where the amount that consumers are willing to pay and the amount that producers are willing to get meet. At this point, there is some profitability for the producers, and the consumers negotiate the price. And a good example of this again would be commodities. The market determines the price, and as the price goes up, there's more supplied, and so on. So where the two meet, the supply curve and the demand curve meet at that particular price, that's known as the equilibrium point, where the supply and the demand and the price meet. With true capitalism, every market is a free market, and there are very few nations that have that anymore. Even the United States has kind of a mixed economy because the government does control some aspects of business and regulates things, and which takes us into socialism. Socialism is an economic system in which small businesses can be run by entrepreneurs, but larger businesses like utilities and even some production are owned by the government itself. Within socialism, citizens are taxed very highly, and the government is involved with making many decisions about health and many other economic decisions as well. As you read the text, in addition to capitalism and socialism, you'll also be introduced to the concept of communism. Within communism, the government makes all economic decisions. And that kind of leads us to where we are today. Communist governments are kind of disappearing. There are very few true communist governments left. And socialist governments are kind of becoming more capitalistic, and capitalist countries are becoming a little bit more socialist. So we're kind of all merging in the middle here. Okay, that was just a brief introduction to the concepts in this chapter, so you will want to read the chapter, study the chapter, take the chapter quiz, and of course any other assignments that are part of your syllabus for this particular chapter.